How's it going, everybody? So, video starting. So straight into it. Why do we fear, panic attacks, agoraphobia, anxiety disorders? Why do we get into this state of having those intrusive thoughts or extreme fears that causes so much pain and suffering that I'm gonna go crazy and lose my mind and be shipped off to a psychiatric ward and all these fears. You can go down the rabbit hole of so many fears that you can have from this, and I'm gonna share my journey with them. How much anxiety, like at the height of my anxiety, these thoughts were just, they were absolutely horrendous, guys. So I'll share my journey with that, and also why it's just not possible to go crazy from panic attacks and anxiety attacks. No matter how many years you've suffered with this from, you're not going to go crazy and lose your mind because of it. So we'll get straight into it, guys. A great quote, it's a fantastic book on if you're dealing with panic attacks. It's based on the Claire Weekes method, of course. But this guy is a scientist who struggled with anxiety and panic disorder, agoraphobia, for 15 years. His name's Jeffrey Hammes, and he has an amazing book called The Panic Switch. It's a fantastic book. When you're going towards recovery, guys, I don't really believe in reading so much, because people that have been through this for so many years, you know everything already. But if you haven't read that book, it's probably, I always would probably limit it to between 1 to 3 books that are actually perfectly fantastic. These are probably 3 books that out of around over 100 I've read that are like, that's spot on. That's truly how to recover. That's true understanding of these disorders. And it'll be like all Claire Weekes' works. Great book by Paul David, At Last a Life. The Dare Response is actually a really good book as well. And then we have The Panic Switch by Jeffrey Hammes. What else are we missing? I'm sure other people have probably written great books as well, but it's all based on basically Claire Weekes' stuff. Also, I guess what's the guy's name that set up the CBT therapy? I think it's Albert Ellis. I think it's possibly that. He has great books on behavioral studies and behavioral science and stuff like that. So also a great book, also a great person to read up on. So there's only a couple of books that really touch on this, like how people truly understand it. And do you know what the funny thing is? It's all people who've struggled with it are the only people that can ever write something on this. So Claire Weekes, the best, has been through it. The scientist Jeffrey Hammes, been through it. Who else are we looking at? I just mentioned there, Paul David, that guy, fantastic book. So 3 of the best books that I've ever read on are for people who went through it. So that tells you everything about these disorders, that people who've been through it really understand it. So anyway, we'll get into it. There's a great quote in Paul David's book, and specifically for people who are afraid to lose their mind and go crazy. And he says, it's along the lines of like, people who are actually crazy, and it's not really a nice thing to call anybody, and it's a human being struggling. I don't really feel proud to speak about that, but that's how we I guess we understand these disorders. Like, people will resonate more with that word. Going crazy, or I don't know, the dog just come in there. Going crazy or losing your mind, And people who are actually crazy, they don't think twice about, if they are or not. And people that are struggling with anxiety disorders are constantly like, oh, am I going crazy? I lose my mind. The fact that you're even questioning that shows that you're not crazy, and you can have these disorders for years, 20, 30, 40 years. Like, I had mine for 10. Will not go crazy and lose your mind, guys. It's just, we're looking at like people lose their mind. It's on the topic of like psychosis and stuff like that, and that's on the total opposite spectrum of anxiety disorders. The total opposite spectrum. You will not go crazy and lose your mind from panic attacks and anxiety, no matter how severe they are, no matter how long they get you stuck in the cycle for. You'll never go crazy and lose your mind, and that's fact. Any clinical psychologist or psychiatrist will tell you that. You're not going to lose your mind and go crazy from a panic disorder. But they can absolutely wreak havoc on you, and I'll get into my journey with it. My journey with these thoughts would be, in my latter stages of it, when I was really, really struggling, and it was awful. It was truly awful. And what I'd do is I would think I'm coming down with a severe mental illness, like bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder. I'd fear like schizophrenia and stuff. It wasn't really much schizophrenia, but I'd fear those types of mental illnesses. And I was like, oh, I definitely have to have one of these because it's gone on for too long, But what I'd do was I'd go in and I'd Google borderline personality disorder test or something, and I'd be writing out, I'd be answering the questions and stuff like that, and I'd obviously get, no, you do not have this, like no even sign of it whatsoever. Still couldn't let it go, and I would be lying in bed literally shaking from these fears, haven't eaten in days, hardly sleeping, falling asleep through exhaustion, falling asleep to panic attack videos for many years. Many years. This wreaked havoc upon me, and that's the true struggle with people with these disorders. They feel that just because they've had it for so long, or they just feel like they're on the edge of a breakdown, or they don't even know what it is. It's something. It's just some gigantic fear that something's gonna click and something's gonna happen. No, there ain't. You have anxiety. You have extreme worry of, I guess, cognitive misinterpretations of harmless bodily sensations. And because you, think about it, guys, you have these disorders for years. Think of how tired the mind is from thinking day after day after day after day, hour after hour. The moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, your brain is so tired. You gotta give it a break. You can't keep questioning, am I going crazy? Is it a heart attack? Is it this? Is it that? It's so tiring, every single day. And with these types of thoughts that we have when we going crazy, and it's never gonna happen, never. And I hope that's some positive reassurance for you. Nothing that you probably haven't read already or listened to, but this is just an extra video to say you ain't gonna go crazy, you ain't gonna lose your mind. People with like the psychosis, stuff like that, on the total opposite end of the spectrum compared to anxiety and panic attacks. You will not develop any sort of psychosis. You will not go into any of those mental health disorders from anxiety and panic attack if that's specifically what you're going through, which is, if you had this for many years and many months, it's guaranteed to be just anxiety and panic. But these disorders can provoke so much inside us, so many fears, that we almost feel, it's not normal to have these thoughts. Something must be wrong. No, false. It's worry. You'll be amazed what type of thoughts people can conjure up when they're going through these disorders, and stuff that I even look back on now and be like, Jesus Christ, how did I think that? And there's people with anxiety disorders are just so normal. They're so normal. And I even work with some people in the coaching, and they're having these fears. I'm just looking through the phone like, you're just so normal. It's untrue. And it's just worry, it's apprehension, it's this fear of a breakdown, or fear of psychosis, and so many things that we can fear from this, guys. And it's not true. It will never happen. You can continue to worry about it. You can continue to, obsess about it, and give into compulsions of searching and going places and going to people to ask for reassurance, and you're wasting your time. Because you ain't gonna come down with it. The more you come to realization that this is just a thought, like any of them, like the heart attack, like the stroke, like the seizure, these disorders can conjure up so many fearful thoughts within us, and you ain't gonna go crazy, or you ain't gonna have some form of ultimate breakdown and go nuts and lose your shit. It's not gonna happen. You'll be so tired, you'll be drained, you'll probably get bedridden, unable to eat and unable to sleep. Probably it's literally the worst it gets. It's horrible. I remember being lying in bed just shaking for days with those thoughts, shaking under the blanket, like horrible, haven't eaten, lost loads of weight, thinking there's something wrong with me because of all the fear. Fear can do that to you. So it's not going to cause any sort of break. The worst it can kind of get is leave you bedridden and feeling depressed and low, and it's awful. It's a horrible thing to go through. I've had, over the 10 years, I've had many of those moments where it made me bedridden, unable to eat, unable to sleep. Horrible thoughts, scary thoughts. I always broke out. I constantly kept breaking out, crawling back, getting decently well again, and going back into it, and just never made steps with the agoraphobia, which led me to a full recovery. So the topic today is going crazy and losing your mind from anxiety disorders. It's just not possible. It can't happen. Whether you continue to have this for 10 years or a year or a couple of months, keep thinking those thoughts, because it ain't going to happen. Don't believe all this. It's such false psychology of, if I keep thinking it's going to happen. Bullshit. It ain't. I hate seeing things like that, like, we are what we think. Yeah. It's absolute bullshit, guys. It's absolute bullshit. You're not, because you're thinking of you're gonna go crazy and lose your mind. It ain't gonna happen. That's just false psychology, and people reading in these self-help books, it's not true. There's no truth to it whatsoever. We can believe, and I think it's a very powerful thing also. And there is a positive side to that. Like, I visualize myself being well and being healthy and being financially stable, and visualize myself in that car or that house that's healthy. It's good. It's great. It's great for the mindset. But as far as like thinking about, like, if I keep thinking about this disorder or a heart attack, it's gonna happen. Bullshit. It ain't gonna happen. It's not how it works. It's not how the brain works. Not how the body works. It's complete bullshit. So don't be thinking and reading into all these shit on self-help books and, if I keep thinking it's gonna happen. No, it won't. It won't. It's a fear. It's an irrational fear. It's a cognitive misinterpretation of the bodily symptoms that are going on in your body. Okay, so you can continue thinking that, but it ain't gonna happen. So to quickly reassure yourself that, like, I just have anxiety. I'm a chronic worrier, and because my brain and body are so tired, these thoughts manifest more inside me than they. Think about when you didn't have this disorder, and you had those thoughts. It means nothing. Even for me now, as somebody who's recovered, if I'm gonna have them thoughts, I'm gonna go crazy, I'm gonna go nuts. It means nothing, because it's not. My nervous system has healed. My brain knows. But when I was going through that and I had those thoughts, I almost believed it. You almost believe these things. That's the thing. Like, there's a sense of what if attached to it. It's 12 and a half minutes already. I'm gonna stop near 15 minutes, guys, because that's the limit for it. But guys, you cannot go crazy if you have an anxiety disorder. You have panic attacks. You have sensitization, from too much stress in the body. You're not going to have, you're not going to lose your mind and go crazy. That's a simple fact. People that go crazy and lose their mind are on a total opposite spectrum of what people with anxiety disorders and panic have. It's impossible. It cannot happen. So I hope this video really reassures you. Guys, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist, not a clinical psychologist. I'm not, but after 10 years of reading up on this and going to people like that, psychologists, clinical psychologists, I know all the facts behind it, know all the fears that I had, and I know you're just experiencing the exact same thing that I experienced. So much worry, because you're in a vulnerable position right now and been stuck in it for so long. You think that you're on the verge of this breakdown or this madness, and it's just not gonna happen. The more you let those thoughts just manifest inside you and have that belief, that it'll just cause you more anxiety, more pain, more sleepless nights. Accept the thoughts that are there. Just because you have the thoughts, it doesn't mean anything. It's just because your brain and body are tired that these thoughts can feel like they mean something, but they don't. Accept your thoughts, accept whatever maddening thoughts that are going on in your head, accept them. Let them be there. Don't push them away. The more you feed into them, the more the nervous system latches on. You don't get that break that it needs. Let the thoughts be there. Let your nervous system heal. You're not going crazy. You're not going nuts. You have an anxiety disorder. You have panic attacks. And that's it, guys. Right? 14 minutes. This video went so quick. Video I can't continue for longer because, it's only 15 minutes that Instagram lets you upload. So that's a pity. But you have an anxiety disorder. You have panic attacks and sensitization. There's nothing wrong with you, guys. Just, whatever thoughts come up into your mind and with going crazy, stuff like that, it's not true, guys. So I hope that helps, guys. Take it easy.